Support comes from the Missouri Forest Products Association, providing more than 41,000 jobs in the production of wood pallets, railroad ties, white oak barrels, hardwood floors, and more. Details at choosewood.com.
This is St. Louis on the Air from St. Louis Public Radio. I'm Elaine Cha.
To showcase the fight for equal pay and just, the fight for anything that you believe in and the ups and downs and how you really have to put.
At times the day-by-day balance that you were doing in terms of competing at the highest level in the world while also carrying on this legal battle. And it seemed that you were very aware of
A fixture on the U.S. women's national soccer team for more than a dozen years. She's been part of teams that have won 2 World Cups and 2 Olympic medals. Tomorrow, the team will play at CityPark in an international friendly against the Republic of Ireland. It's a tune-up game before this year's 2023 World Cup. And for the first time, the U.S. women will be eligible to earn the same World Cup prize money as the men's team. That's because of a sweeping agreement players made last year with the U.S. Soccer Federation. St. Louis Public Radio's Jeremy Goodwin talked with Becky Sauerbrunn about that years-long legal battle and more. And Jeremy started the conversation with tomorrow night's game at the new soccer stadium.
I know that you had the chance to play Busch Stadium a couple years ago in front of 35,000 of your closest friends. But what does it mean to come home and play this friendly in a brand new soccer stadium in the middle of St. Louis?
To me, it's super exciting, and it just goes to show that St. Louis is very much a soccer city, and it's great to see kind of the evolution of the game, getting an MLS side, getting a soccer-specific stadium in the city. So it's all like steps in the right direction, and I think St. Louis absolutely deserves to have representation of soccer everywhere in the city.
Well, growing up here, and what sort of soccer infrastructure was there here for a budding player like yourself?
In Olivette, which was great, they had the Olivette Athletic Association, the OAA, and so, at a young age, you're kind of thrown into all these different sports that you want to play, and it was very much you're playing with your friends, and someone's mom or dad is probably coaching the team. And that's how I got started in soccer. I was playing OAA with a bunch of my school friends from Old Bonham, and we just had such a great time that we just wanted to continue playing together. And so that team wound up being a team I played for a few years, both indoor and outdoor.
I read you attended St. Louis ambush games at the Family Arena?
Oh, all the time. Yeah, we always made such a little event out of it. I'd have one of my teammates with me. We'd go to dinner, then go to one of the games. Ambush, Steamers, whatever team it was at the time, we were definitely there.
And you're right to mention that there's a great history in this city of support for soccer. But do you think you've seen the enthusiasm increase in recent years and decades?
Absolutely. I think soccer as a sport has become a little bit more streamlined, whereas before it was kind of like a niche sport. And I think it's kind of making its way into being, a major one. And it's great that I think St. Louis has always had a history and appreciation for soccer. And it's great that it now has a team to really show, because you look at one of those city games and you see a sellout crowd, you see this beautiful stadium, you just see the absolute excitement from everybody, and it's awesome to see.
Well, let's talk, if we can, about equal pay, which I think is a huge part of your legacy up there with the World Cups and the Olympic medals. You were, of course, one of 5 members of the U.S. national women's team who filed suit in 2019 seeking equal pay with the men's team. And it's a complicated timeline, but you reached your eventual settlement with U.S. Soccer a couple of years after a federal judge actually dismissed a lot of your case. So I wonder, why do you think you were successful in the end?
Yeah, it is quite the timeline and a lot of ups and downs for sure. Why do I think that we were finally successful?
Yeah, because you had lost a lot of your legal leverage at that point, but you still came out with an agreement that you seemed to feel pretty good about.
Yeah, I think a lot of that is because we were arguing and fighting for the right things. I think the argument was there. I think, the judge partially sided with U.S. Soccer when it came down to some of the financials, but as for the working conditions, which to us is very important as well, they absolutely thought that there was too much inequality and that needed to be rectified right away. And so while we were working on making sure that those working conditions were equalized, our talks with U.S. Soccer, I think, changed a little bit, and we got a little bit more collaborative, and we found a way to eventually equalize even the financial part of it. And with a lot of help from the men's national team and the men's national team players association, especially when it came to World Cup prize money, because for us, that was the biggest difference was between the World Cup prize money. U.S. Soccer was, great about equalizing things like friendlies and per diems, things that are directly in their control. And then with the help of the men's PA and U.S. Soccer, we found out how to then equalize the prize money, which for us is where the big amounts of money come in.
Yeah, and that, as you mentioned, that took some cooperation from the men's team because they did need to agree to give up that money.
The hope is that FIFA will eventually equalize prize money, and so then it'll be mutually beneficial. What's so great about what the guys did is that they knew that the prize money wasn't going to be equalized within this next 2 World Cups for the men and the women. So yeah, they knew that they were going to be giving up some of their prize money, but they were doing it because they believed it was the right thing to do. And for that, we are very appreciative that they were willing to work with us on that. But our hope is that when FIFA equalizes the prize money, it'll then be a mutually beneficial relationship.
Well, when you look at that timeline of that long struggle, I wonder if you successfully moved the public conversation to a place where, even if you weren't victorious on some of the key points in court, it just became untenable for U.S. Soccer to really continue what they've been doing.
I believe so. I think a lot of sponsors were supporting the women. I think they also thought that the inequalities and some of the things that were said publicly were wrong. And so I think the pressure from those sponsors, I think the public pressure as well from the fan base. And then I think you had, some Congress people that really stepped up and were siding with us. And then you also had President Biden talking about the issues and saying that the women deserved equal pay. And so I think a lot of pressure came from them from all these different sides. And so I think, it always helps to have other people, aiding and allying in your fight.
And now you look at Norway, Australia, the Netherlands are all talking seriously about equal pay between their men's and women's teams. Do you look around and see that you've made an impact around the world?
I think so. I think the fact that our Players Association, we get asked a lot about the structure of our CBA, our collective bargaining agreement, how we looked at certain things, how we, basically created metrics for things that had never been created for the women's side, like viewership and broadcasting deals and things like that. And so having all these different federations reach out, ask questions, like our next step now that we have achieved equal pay is to help other federations get equal pay as well. And luckily, the Players Association affiliated with FIFA, which is called FIFPro, we're in constant talks with them because they are, spearheading the fight for the equalization of the prize money for the World Tournament.
You're featured in the 2021 documentary film LFG about the team's fight for equal pay, and the film actually ends on a sadder note for the players with the court decision against you. I wonder, have you sat down and watched that film since the happier resolution of this effort?
I haven't. I only watched it when we were still kind of in the dumps a little bit, while we were still really fighting for continued talks, still trying to garner support on our side. So it would be interesting to watch it now, having come to such a great resolution. And I'm glad that we took part in that. I think it's important to showcase the fight for equal pay and just, the fight for anything that you believe in, and the ups and downs and how you really have to push through and be resilient.
Yeah, and that's a really an up-close look at almost at times the day-by-day balance that you were doing in terms of competing at the highest level in the world while also carrying on this legal battle. And it seemed that you were very aware of how winning matches would, in a sense, help your case, but there's a sad element to that shouldn't have been so important, maybe.
Exactly. And unfortunately for us, we knew that if we were winning, we were relevant and that people would have their eyes on this team. And I hope we get to a spot where it's more about the argument that women just deserve equal pay because they are doing the same work. And that was our argument all along. And unfortunately, we needed to keep winning and we needed the spotlight just to make sure that we stayed relevant.
Well, it's handy when you can win a couple World Cups anyway. That helps, right?
I mean, it doesn't hurt, that's for sure.
Stepping back a bit, do you think the success of the U.S. women's national team has moved the needle in this country in a broader sense in terms of how people think about women's sports here and the popularity of women's sports?
I think so. I think it's good to have something that you can point to and be like, look, like they've done it. This is proof that if you invest, if you put in a stable infrastructure, you will see a return of that interest. And I think our team has done that. I think that you're seeing that in March Madness this year, where so many people are watching the women's games as compared to the men's games. So it's really like we need the investment, we need the opportunity and the chance. And I think we're getting to a place in society where that's more freely given. We have still so much more to go. When you look at, the coverage of sports in general, it is so male dominated. And so there's absolutely still places that we need to fight and keep pushing for more viewership and more of those platforms that you see all the time on the ESPN, CBS, and the Fox Sports and things like that. But we're getting there. It's baby steps. I would love it to be more exponential, but I think we're definitely entering a time where I think organizations really see this untapped market potential with women's sports.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I think sometimes you get in these circular arguments where, a skeptic will say, well, the ratings for these events are not so great. And then you say, well, look at the network they're on. They're not really being showcased. They're hard to find. There's a negative sort of feedback loop sometimes that you have to break through.
Oh, very much so. I mean, you have to look, like you said, you have to look at the marketing. You have to look at the channel. You have to look at when the game kicks off. Is it during prime time or is it in the middle of a workday? All these things that really make a difference. If you see women in sports put on this like world-class stage at the right time, it makes such a difference. Like if you're treated as second class, you're going to be viewed as second class.
Well, the international friendly against the Republic of Ireland at CityPark is your last match before heading to Australia and New Zealand for the 2023 World Cup. How do you like your chances?
Our chances against Ireland or?
In the World Cup.
I have to say, I'm extremely biased, but I think we've got a great chance. I think we've got a wonderful side. I think we've got the talent. I think we've got the drive and the desire. Winning 3 World Cups in a row would be historic. No other team, I don't think men or women, has ever done it. So we would be creating history, and I think there's a reason that hasn't happened before because it's extremely difficult just to win 1, let alone 2, and 3 is wow. So, that's what we're going for, and we know we have a huge target on our backs just from, past success, and we'll see. We'll definitely see. It's one of those things where in a major tournament, if you have the momentum and it's on your side, you can ride that through the entire tournament. So that's something that you try to pick up as soon as possible and just go with it.
I imagine, as a younger person playing the game, you might have fantasized about playing in a World Cup, winning a World Cup, but not winning 2 or 3 of them.
I absolutely was one of those young people that watched this side win in 1999 and thought, like, I need to know what it feels like to win one of these things, to see how the joy on their faces, the relief on their faces as well after they won. They beat China in the Rose Bowl, and it was just so inspiring to me and got me on my journey to get onto the national team and to make a World Cup roster. So I know I'm so fortunate to hopefully go to my 4th, which would be, unbelievable.
Well, I want to be sure to ask you about this also. Recently, you wrote an op-ed column supporting trans kids playing sports, particularly trans girls playing girls' sports. Why was it important to speak out about that?
Luckily, I've been given this platform because of the teams that I've played on. And when I think about what I have learned, especially as a young person playing sports, the teamwork that you learn, the challenges, the obstacles that you learn to overcome, the camaraderie, the relationships that you create, fighting for a common goal, like all these things that really give you a sense of purpose and belonging. And I think that's so important for young people, and especially for transgendered youth, to deny the opportunity for these children to have that sense of belonging and the camaraderie and all that, I think is extremely cruel. So I wrote that op-ed knowing that it was going to be extremely polarizing, but I so truly believe that transgendered youth should get to play on sports teams with the gender that they identify with. And I knew it was going to be, a pretty polarizing op-ed, especially in Missouri, but I just felt with the platform that I've been given, I wanted transgendered youth and, their families and allies to know that there are people that do support them and do believe that they should get to play. And I also wanted to call out the legislation that's asking to ban these transgendered youth from getting to play sports and put some pressure on them as well.
Well, as someone who has a ton of experience playing in first on girls' teams and then women's teams, when you hear someone stand up and say they're talking about protecting girls and women, what do you say to that?
I say that is just a political tool that they are using, because if people were truly invested in protecting women's sports, it would go back to what we talked about earlier about making sure that there is investment in the women's sports, that you are hiring the right people. I mean, just in the NWSL alone, there has been rampant sexual and verbal abuse. And so making sure that you're hiring people that are affiliated with these teams and these women's to protect them and to create safe environments. You know, you can go to Title IX compliance at universities, like all these things. If you want to protect women's sports, there are so many things that you can look to and say, well, why aren't you doing all these things?
That's Olivette native Becky Sauerbrunn talking with St. Louis Public Radio's Jeremy Goodwin. Sauerbrunn has been part of the U.S. women's national soccer team for more than a dozen years and has been part of teams that have won 2 World Cups and 2 Olympic medals. The women's national team will play an international friendly tomorrow against the Republic of Ireland at CityPark. Tomorrow on St. Louis on the Air, we'll hear about...
Today's episode was produced by Alex Hoyer and Jeremy Goodwin.
Podcast design by Aaron Dorr.
Our production intern is Avery Rogers.
Our executive producer is Alex Hoyer.
St. Louis on the Air is a production of St. Louis Public Radio. Understanding starts here.
Our podcast proudly supports St. Louis artists by using music from Life Creative Group.
Do you find yourself regularly listening to episodes of St. Louis on the Air? Suggest us to a friend you think might enjoy our conversations. And leave us a review and rating on Apple Podcasts on the App Store. It's the simplest way to help people discover our show. Thanks.
St. Louis Public Radio is a member-supported service of the University of Missouri St. Louis.
Support comes from the Missouri Forest Products Association, providing more than 41,000 jobs in the production of wood pallets, railroad ties, white oak barrels, hardwood floors, and more. Details at choosewood.com.